All right. Hello. Welcome everyone. I'm here with uh the director of the upcoming production Fefu and Her Friends for Cal Poly Pomona Theater. Uh the one and only.
Hey, Jessica Hanna here.
Yeah, Jessica Hanna, the amazing director and awesome theater maker she is. All right, cool. With that being said, my first question is just to start things off, like, oh, what's your story like? What's your story like? Your theater background, like,
Hmm,
what made you want to, you know, pursue theater as a career and as a passion?
okay. I have a this is my origin story, okay? Totally. Because it's pretty clear. So I started my mom took me on stage when I was 4 for the first time in a light opera called by Gilbert and Sullivan called Trial by Jury. And so I was on stage, and apparently the story goes is that I would sing everything off stage, and as soon as I walked on stage, I put my finger in my mouth. So she couldn't get me to do anything on stage. But so then then I did another, and I grew up in Ithaca, New York, which has a pretty nice art scene and has 2 colleges there, so it also has a lot of art that way. But there is a summer theater there called the Hangar Theater, and when I was 7, I played the little girl in Showboat. And the one scene that the little girl is in is where her dad comes to say that he's leaving. At the same time in my life, my parents were splitting up and my dad was moving out of town. And so I have, and I'm not sure if it is exactly true, but it has become true in my memory that my dad came to see me in the show, and then from there, he and the woman who became my stepmother, they drove away and moved to Texas. And I turned around and walked back into the theater and sat down backstage with the 2 people who played my mom and dad, and started playing cards and doing stuff with them backstage. And forever, the theater has been the safe place. The theater has been the place where I can find family. The theater has been the place where I have a space that is different. It's different than the rest of, and it's the safe space, I guess, is the best place. Safe space, brave space. So that's like, I mean, like straight up origin story. In terms of, it's like deep in my psyche. So that when people ask me, like, what else would you do if you couldn't do this? I go, I don't know what else I would do. And then throughout my life, been always like, I tried to find as many things, both, if I didn't get cast in what was happening in school, then I would go, I like assistant directed and did production work for the opera company in town. Or I worked at the summer that's in the hangar. I did like a part on, like in high school, I would do like the maid in a you never can tell, and then I'd also move stuff around backstage and be a stagehand all summer. So like I was always doing, like trying to find places in theater to do, always. And then I went to the theater school at DePaul and got my BFA in acting there, and so a very focused on acting and theater program. And then I stayed in Chicago I was there for 8 years, and I made a bunch of stuff there, both as an actor, and then I got into, because I really got into fight choreography as I in the later part of my like last couple of years of college. And then I realized that if I got certified with the Society of American Fight Directors, that could be a skill. So then I actually was a fight choreographer for a few plays around town. So it became like, oh, start to like get skills that I can use in different ways and not just be an actor. And then I moved out here in 96, and this is also where my mom grew up. My mom grew up in LA, so I had grandparents and cousins and stuff here, so I had people to land with. And I love LA. I love like I like being helping to create what the theater scene is here. And that it took me a little while. I was very fish out of water, didn't know how to promote myself as an actor. What am I doing? Where is theater here? So did a lot of that searching. And then 2002, I took my first city company workshop. And the City Company is a company out of New York, led by Ann Bogart, and they train in Suzuki and Viewpoints training, and that was totally scary, and also then really another life changer, both in terms of the work for me as an artist, but then I also took some of the things I learned on the floor, like phrases like "follow your interest." It was like, what if I apply that to my life? And slowly, like, that sort of shifted things for me. I was working day jobs and then doing theater at night, and then kind of out of nowhere, this opportunity to start a space was dropped in my lap, and I was like, I don't know anything about any of this, but they were like, you could do it, and I was like, okay. So I started this place called Bootleg Theater, and I ran that for 12 years as the managing and producing director, and learned how to run a nonprofit and arts organization, and built it, from pretty much zilch to having a decent sized budget. And then it also became a music venue. And then I left in
Oh,
2018, end of 2018. And I've been freelance directing and producing since, and teaching workshops, and doing all kinds of stuff. And actually, not just in LA, but I've gotten to travel with it as well, both like Santa Fe, where I've gone to North Carolina. I produced 2 shows at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and spent a month there 2 summers ago. And yeah, and now I am pursuing, I make projects here in LA for like primarily, but have my feelers out to other things. I'm also a member of the Kilroys, which is a group of artists, playwrights, who are working for gender parity in the American theater. So we lift up plays by women, trans, and non-binary writers, and that's one of our. It's kind of it's an arts political group, I guess, in a way, and we, trying to find interesting ways to give people resources. So there's never the Kilroys were not created by me. I'm the second batch of Kilroys, but the original members, or the original OG Kilroys, the whole thing came about because an artistic director at a big national gathering, when asked why weren't there more plays by women on stage, he said, well, there aren't any. And all the women in the room went, what? They're okay, fine. The answer to that question then is, let's put together a list that you can easily find. And here, there are plays by women, and there are plays by trans and non-binary writers. So that's where that kind of evolved from, and doing so in a kind of a guerrilla girl way, trying to use social media in a funky way, and not necessarily be an institution, but be more punk rock about it. So those are kind of some of the things that I do. I'm also right now, I became a board member of the City Company, and now I'm the chair of the board for them. Yep, totally. That's been in this last year. I became the chair. So helping them to guide their way, as they're going through a transformation right now, and in the next 2 years, and so trying to help them figure out what that is. So yeah, those are all like, I used to wear a lot of hats. I still have a few hats, but I'm trying to make it more about the things, all the different things that I do are in the same garden. Like, it's like, I used to refer to my freelance garden, because you never know what, you talk to an artist about a project, it goes away for a couple of years, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, that's coming back. Or hey, I'd had that conversation with that person, they'd be great for this part. And so it's like you're constantly cultivating what's going to happen, like what maybe the next art project is, or how to make the next art project. Or I also like being a resource and a mentor, so try to do some of that as well, as much as I can. Yeah.
Wow.
There, that's the semi-short bio version. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, just I have no words. Just thank you so much. Just
Oh, you're welcome.
yeah.
I'm a pretty good example of the follow. Like, that's the thing about follow your interest.
Mm-hmm.
Is how trying to make, the more I align the art that I make, or how I participate in art, with who I am and what I believe, the better I feel, the more, yeah. And it's like, and again, it expands also because I believe in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's been pretty huge for me. Um, yeah, I bill myself as a daughter of Dionysus. Like when I first thought of, I was like, Jess, that is so cheesy, super cheesy. And then I started like actually like, no, it is kind of the correct thing in that I feel like it's on one level it's a calling, I serve and I serve at the altar of the storytelling, and Dionysus being a stand-in for, I mean,
Mm,
Dionysus,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
totally, exactly. But then, I'm like this, the when I feel best about who I am in my life is when I am serving that something a little like, I think of it as a higher calling in terms of storytelling, allows people to, um, or it illuminates our lives in a way that hopefully finds us, finds a path for us. Anne Bogart often says that theater is about seeing how we want the world to be. It puts up, and it may not be necessarily, it's not always like pretty, or it shows you something about the world that helps you to find the way you want the world to be. And so I like that idea of theater, and I always feel better when I'm working that way. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. All right, and with the next question, I
Hmm.
did are there any artists that you looked up to while you were growing up and
Ah,
being an up and coming artist, like any artists who helped inspired you, or like playwrights, directors, actors, or anything like that?
right. I mean, Anne Bogart and the City Company were big, huge parts of that just in the last 20 years. But before that, I had the privileged luxury, because where I grew up, Ithaca was 4.5 hours north of New York City, and far enough away that I couldn't just like go. But I was very lucky in that my mom, she had a friend who lived down in the village, so the cheapest, best vacations we could take were to go crash on. She'd take my sister and I down there, and we'd crash on a couch and go see a bunch of plays.
Mm,
So I got to see a bunch of Broadway stuff, some off Broadway as well. But I got to see, I also grew up like into musicals for a while, and did some of that as well. Wasn't always my jam, but like I got to see Bernadette Peters a couple times, loved her and what she does. And then I got to see Gregory Hines do a play or a musical called Jelly's Last Jam with a very young Savion Glover. It was what I think might have been his first show. And Keith David was in that show, and he
mm.
was played the Chimney Man, and it was basically a version of Death. And there was something so strong and still about him. And then that correlates to, I also got to see the original company of Joe Turner's Come and Gone, the August Wilson play, that Delroy Lindo was in. And that was I have a very visceral memory of, and I didn't know who he was. I probably was like 15, maybe 14 when I saw it. Um, and it was the first time I experienced in a space, like sitting in a theater and an actor comes on stage and the whole freaking room changed. Like, just like there was like, and part of it, I think back on it now, and part of it was like he was like still but vibrating. He had so much energy, and there was a danger about him, and there was like whatever the character he was embodying, you know. And like those moments, there was a play called there was a I guess musical out of South Africa called Serafina, that was about what was happening in South Africa at the time in the 80s and apartheid. And that experience of that show, which was super joyous and also deeply moving, but also the experience of the audience, like the audience was, we were on our feet clapping and all. I mean, it was so the energy of that room. Like I have so like the things I have, I'm trying to think if there are other specific artists, like directing wise, because I would say the things I have are often experiences in the theater that kind of like, oh, that meant that built on that. The time the Hanger did The Normal Heart when it first came out in the late 80s, and that was the first time I saw something, a play that was talking about something that I thought of as political, the AIDS crisis, like that I thought of in terms of like what I knew about it from like my mom and like the people around her and stuff. I knew about it, but then like to see a play that spoke directly to it and to see what it did both to me and the people around me, that was another big learning moment about what theater can do. And then there was a director in Chicago while I was in college named Mary Zimmerman, and she's still around. She still does stuff. But her work that I saw then, which was very ensemble based, really physical, and she'd do things like, there was one in this play called Journey to the West. There was a moment where somebody was supposed to, like, one of the characters was supposed to, like, flying, right? And they were staying on the same plane. They were on the ground. Feet were on the ground, but everybody behind them slowly, like, all of a sudden there were I didn't realize, but there were places they could hold on this back wall, and they turned, and all of a sudden they like shifted where they were physically, and they were looking, so that all of a sudden it was like, oh, our point of view just turned so that we're looking down on the people that this character is flying over. That just, and like all, and it was so simple, but it totally like changed the perspective for me and the audience. And like she did really great stuff like that seemed with physical bodies and not a whole lot of like, so it would come through spectacularly, but didn't have a lot of like spectacle stuff. So she was a big influence for me in early, like in my coming, like right out of college, and the stuff I was seeing. And then I had a great teacher at school named Rick Murphy, who he actually lives out here now. He does do some improv. He teaches some an improv, like Spolin improv, so longer form, not necessarily for the funny, but like to explore how we physically, how we express what the who, what, where is, and show what's happening in space just with our bodies. And he was a huge teacher for me back at school, and that's in my base foundation work. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, and then there's some actors that I like, I love them and I'd love to see them again and again. Fiona Shaw. God, who else have I gotten to see that I loved? I know I have a few favorite actors around here. I also have some favorite actors like that I've worked with who have since given up acting and gone on to be parents, do the thing, whatever. And I'm always like, hey, don't you want to? Hey. I have a couple of them who are like, stop asking me that. I'm like, okay. You changed your life. That's okay. But I still think you're one of the best actors I've ever seen. Okay, cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
have to respect what people's choices are.
Yeah.
Same time, I know I'm right.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I have a specific question about the play.
Yeah.
Upcoming. Yeah. So Maria Irene Fornes is one of the most one of the most critically acclaimed playwrights ever, and just really at the top of the echelon, especially with this play Fefu and Her Friends. And because of its plot structure and the symbolism, as well as a lot of elements and like themes and all the stories of the characters, like class, gender, there's also some supernatural elements, and just like being in a community together, in a play where it's an all-female cast, and where the play is set in 1935 in the New England area, and just fighting the system of patriarchy. And so my question is like, what do you enjoy the most out of the whole entire play with the with all of the things it offers?
All of those things in there.
Yeah.
I really love how it is, because I think when uh, groups of women get together, they talk differently if it's just women. And particularly then you have, and in this case, you have women who have had some have had long friendships. And also how women evolve or don't, um, when, how life takes crazy turns, um, and how we support each other or don't. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that, I think class is a big part of it. One of the things we also talked about, particularly with designers, was how do we look at, because she was writing in 1973, 3, about 1930s, right? And then we're doing this play in 2020. So what were the ways that we could see what that, like, how to look at it through a lens, like she's already looking back through it, but it's coming through this. I mean, so much of what's in the play is really from 1970s, right? In the early 1970s, and what was happening in the feminist movement. And like there was stuff like that happening back in the day in the 30s, but she chose not to do a play about women in the 70s. She wanted to talk about women from 40 years earlier. So here we are doing a play that was written 50 years earlier about, so it's like how and what are some of the through lines that we can find for ourselves or for women, through all those things. Like, one of the things, there'll be some of it, I think there will end up being some of it, but like Melanie Lopez doing sound, I asked her to look for older songs like from that period, but maybe in a modern cover, and she found a bunch of fun stuff. So like how, and I think they'll just be in pre-show, but I'm not sure. But like that's a way of talking about, like, looking back at something that comes from this period, but looking at but where we are right now, right? And I mean, on one level, where we are right now, I think comes through in the play just because we're doing it on Zoom, because this is the medium we have to use, which is very right now.
Yes.
So what are the ways that, that we're already in this place of right now, but we want to look back and look back. And so hopefully some of that comes through. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. But we were definitely all, I mean, I think some of it will come. Who knows? You can't control what an audience thinks, but those are the things that, right? Can't. But those are the things that we were thinking about as we talked about, like both the design and then also in terms of the acting and the script work and things like that. Yeah, yeah, really,
Wow.
totally.
Yeah, it is like I had I had to do my research because I was like, I I need to know. It's so deep.
Yeah. No, I mean, and Fornez is, she's not easy. She's not easy at all. I
Mm.
don't know. Are you familiar with? There's a couple of plays of hers that you should look at. Mud, and then, oh, what's the other one? I have to look it up. But I saw a really great.
I've heard of mud. I need to.
Mud.
Yeah.
Mud is often is a good one for, because there's a couple of, it's younger characters.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's a good one to look at in terms of and for scenes. But again, not an easy play, and like not just like hard in terms of figuring out what it is or how it goes, but also just like subject matter is not easy. She does not pull any punches.
Mm. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep. All right.
also exciting.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. And okay. Thank you. And the next question is kind of two-part. For all of the aspiring artists who want to be a director in the world of theater and cinema and like all those things with one another, like from your perspective, what does it take to be one? Like in philosophical terms or literal terms, like the capabilities. And the second part of that question would be, what are your most rewarding moments as an actor working with other people and actors?
Okay. Um, I think that's a lot. I think a lot of what does it take? You have to have, for a director, you have to have curiosity and enthusiasm. Um, and you got to be brave because you're going to have to lead people into places that are hard, both physically and emotionally. And so then there's also the care, I think, that needs to be part of a director's quiver. And that's and then the quiver, I mean, which is try, I mean, I am definitely of a mind that, get as many, look to learn, watch as many things as you can, and look for the things that interest you, right? Because like the Suzuki viewpoints really did something for me. So like then I started looking for like, okay, where does Chuck Mee is a member of that theater. Maybe his plays would have something. So I started reading a bunch of Chuck Mee plays and was like, those are amazing. Or directing wise, like I love the grand gestures of Ivo van Hove. So I try to like, okay, where can I find more of his work? Because I mean, he's based in Europe, but like I've seen a couple of plays that toured here, but then like also what can I find online? What can I read about? I think it's important for directors to, if you haven't had experience as an actor before, you need to figure out how to understand actors. And that might mean
Uh-huh.
reading some acting books. That might mean doing something uncomfortable like taking a class. That might mean whatever, because I think it's really important to have to understand what the process is that an actor must go through in order to in order to help an actor to find their way. It is very helpful to know or to have some understanding of what the process is. And my process may not be the same as every actor I encounter, but I understand, like when I see, like also like those moments of when something it's totally revelatory and you like get it, you're like yes, and I can help you figure out how to get to there again, because I understand getting to what the getting to there was. Or actors coming up against walls of like, I can't figure this out. I have in my toolbox some things that I used to try as an actor, so let me try some of those, right? Or so I think also one of my favorite phrases as a director is, how can I help? And that goes for working with actors, that goes for working with designers, in terms of how can I help tell this, how can I help you to tell this story? Because in the end, director's gonna walk away and you're gonna have to, like, actors are gonna have to tell the story. So what I hopefully am doing is helping the actor to get to a place where they can tell the story over and over and over and over again, and feel good about it, feel healthy about it, not get taken out by it. Yeah, I think those are some of my primaries in terms of directing. And then wait, what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, I threw a lot at you. The second one was, is the moments that the most rewarding moments to you as a director.
I mean, I love it when people like, if things click. I also love, I have to admit, those moments, especially on comedies, when I've told people like, no, here, check it out. Either like use that comma, take a breath there. If you say this fast, doing something really technical, saying like, hey, if you do this, this, and this, try that. And then like actor does it, still may not be believing me, but does it. And then like audience is there, and audience, like, they get a laugh off of doing it that way. I feel super, that's very satisfying to be able to help an actor get to that place. But also there's those moments like, hope that works, but I'm pretty sure if you have this timing, that will lead to this. So that is a very specific thing I can point to in terms of satisfying. Um,
Mm.
I find tech very satisfying when, because that's when like getting everybody into the room and like, okay, now we're all making it together. I find
Yes.
those really satisfying. Also because it's satisfying in that it is a culmination of the process with like, because usually I'm talking to designers months before I get into a room with actors. So then to actually have those designers come in and bring what we've been talking about for 3 months, and then stuff starts to work where, you talked about it in theory. I had a very satisfying experience on like that on when I directed Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, because it's a musical, but like we were in the tiniest of spaces. I mean, it was like 12 by 15 stage, and it was a giant musical about a bus and drag queens on a bus. I mean, it was like couldn't have gotten bigger. But I had this really great like months before we even started rehearsal, I had to sit down with my costume designer, my lighting designer, and my assistant director and choreographer. And we literally talked through the whole show and said, well, okay, the bus has to all of a sudden the bus has to be painted pink. How do we do that? And like talk through like, what about if the girls are wearing skirts that come off of them in elastic or with a Velcro and then get stuck on the thing? And like, we were like, that's what we're going to do. And we didn't know, you go through the whole thing of like, she made the skirts, he made the set, and it did, choreographer figured out how to do a twirl to get the skirt off, and so it like, and then in tech, all of a sudden it was like, okay, all the pieces coming together, and it worked, and it was exciting, I mean, so there's, not only did it work on stage, but oh my God, that thing we talked about, actually, we've actually made that happen. And there's something very satisfying about that, for sure. Yeah,
Oh,
the collaboration is very, very satisfying.
yes.
Yeah,
All coming together in one big picture.
totally.
Yeah. Um, I have just a couple questions left.
Wait, I have to grab keep talking. I'm grabbing my shoes because I got to jet after we talk.
Oh, okay,
No,
okay,
keep talking. I'm listening.
okay. Uh, just what are some of the fondest memories you have in this production with everyone? If there's any like, like, oh, I'm gonna take this with me. Yeah, I don't know.
You mean fondest memories from this process?
Yes.
Okay. I would say number one, the building of the ensemble. Well, I should say chronologically, conversation with designers was really great, and the way that Hanalei came up with a way to solve, or what we have tried, what we are doing, of how to have the actors be in three-dimensional shared space, but in their own, they're in their bedrooms, right? So, and on a screen. But
Yeah.
what is the way that we can make them all be in the room together? And she really went for it. And I'm hopeful that some of that will come through. But that was really that kind of coming to that conclusion of like, oh, this is how we're going to do it. Working with the ensemble, the actors, with in our warm-ups, we would always do composition work, so like devising work, where I'd give them a recipe. We do like a physical warm-up, and then we do a recipe, like, okay, I'm gonna send, and then I send everybody to breakout rooms, 2 groups, and you have to make a piece that has slow motion, a surprise, pass the prop. Everybody has to make an entrance and exit. And maybe there were a few times I was like, it's brunch. You haven't seen one of the people has a secret, like, so give them a bunch of things, and then they go away for 10, 15 minutes. And the pieces they came back with were awesome and like hilarious. So often, more often than not, and like things I never would have thought of. I couldn't have been like, here, this is what you should do to tell this story. Because so the participation and the ingenuity of the cast members in making things from the start was really exciting, and very satisfying. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to say that the end of this is satisfying because it's very different for me too, in terms of like, we did do some, we could run each act before we started tech, but once we started tech, we had to do stop, start, move things, stop, start. And I mean, I have great respect for the cast in terms of they all stayed focused and did all the things. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, I would say the hardest thing in online work is on the actor, because you're doing so many other things besides acting.
Yeah.
And so it's like how to stay focused, how to enjoy yourself, find some joy in it. So it's hard. It is definitely hard, and hopefully they had a good time. I
Oh,
know it wasn't easy all the time.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being in my interview. And make sure to watch Fefu and Her Friends. Get your tickets in the link bio in the Instagram account, and we'll see you there.
Yes.
Yes. Bye, everybody.